Hey everybody, welcome to the first of hopefully many dev blogs covering my game. For those who know I am, you will know that this isn't actually being uploaded on my personal channel. I've decided to make a brand new YouTube channel as I want to fully, pursue this game's development, and I want to try and make it professional. Something you'll notice in the coming minutes is that I actually have content in this game. I tried making another dev blog of a different project like a couple of years ago, but it had no content. Because back then I didn't really understand the undertaking that is making a video game. So for this dev blog, I've decided to get some actual work done first. And for those thinking on visiting my personal channel, I wouldn't recommend it. Most of the videos are kind of old and cringy, but I mean, if you're curious, I'll put a link in the description of the video. And with that out of the way, let's head straight into the project. So starting off, what type of game is it? This is a question that I'm not even sure of myself. As I'm developing it, I keep getting different ideas for other games or games I could make with what I'm working with, but there's a couple of features and motivations that I'm going to stick with. The first couple being randomization and loot. This is a really fun aspect of a lot of games for me. Because there's just something so engaging when you get something powerful or an item that synergizes with a certain skill or build you're going for. It's very fun. Another feature is multiplayer. I'm going to try my absolute best to get multiplayer in this game, as I feel it's the best aspect of gaming as a whole. The ability to play with friends makes almost any game better by tenfold. And for this game, I plan on adding things like trading, clans, Steam support, client hosting, leaderboards, a player hub, and many more sort of multiplayer features like that. I'm going to try and make it the main aspect of my kind of development once I get the base stuff done. Finally is customization. I want to make sure that players are able to personalize almost everything. This will range from your player character, the color of their player, and your armor, vast amounts of different types of armor and cosmetic, pieces you can wear, clan images, personal images, and maybe even sprays, but I wouldn't trust people with sprays. Besides those sort of base general features, this game could go in any direction, and I'm curious to see where it ends up. So, what are the plans for this game? At the current moment, there are none. This project is mainly going to be me learning how to use Unreal 4, and just sort of the ins and out of, indie game development. How long will it take? I have no clue. I hope to get this project kind of over and done with in about a year or two, but it all depends on how much time I have to work on it. All the content and stuff you'll see coming up has only taken me around a month or so to do, and this wasn't a month of pure working. It was more of every day I'd work 1 to 4 hours on it. Some days I'd work, almost all day on it. Other days I just wouldn't do anything. Some features in particular were quite hard to do, and they may look simple on the surface, but let me tell you, it took a good amount of time. Some of them took a week or more, and they're not even fully finished. Where are you getting the assets? I'm actually going to be trying to make as many assets as I can for this game. And for the ones that I can't create or I borrow from someone else, with their permission obviously, I'm going to credit the author. For this current dev blog, every single model, animation, texture, just everything you see will have been made by myself, with the exception of the water surface, which was a modified class from the Unreal Content Pack. What is the name of the project? As of right now, there is no name. I don't want to fall into the name trap where I announce a name too early and eventually get sick of it. Or announce a name and then the game gains a little bit of traction and then I change it and people get kind of confused. I've seen it happen to way too many other games and I don't want to fall into that trap. I'll formally name it when the game takes more shape to it and I get some inspiration for it. Why are you making it in the first place? The main reason is because, like many others, I've wanted to make games since I was a child. The problem was, back then, I was either too lazy, too dumb, or I didn't understand what it takes to make a game. And for those who don't know, it's a lot. I tried making some games in the past, but they never really got anywhere, and I was stuck in this loop of trying and giving up, trying and giving up. So I decided to wait until I felt like I knew enough and had the time and motivation to go through with one. And I feel like now is that time. I'm older, I'm smarter, and I know the effort it takes to make a game, at least of this scale. Another thing is I can gauge my expectations and I can predict what it's going to take out of me in terms of time and money. And the reason I started a month ago specifically was because I finished a college semester and I was like, hey, let's see what I can get done in a month. And I feel like this is enough to where I want to keep working on it. With those little kind of mini questions out of the way, we're going to head straight into the game now. One thing to mind is that this is very early. There's a lot of assets that I want to change, specifically the jumping animations and maybe some of the textures I'm not a big fan of. So just keep that on your mind. If you see anything janky, maybe an animation kind of being hitchy, it's all work in progress. I want you to try and think of the actual coding behind it, and more so than maybe the face value. Hopefully, it'll get a lot prettier by the end. Oh, and just a small thing, there is no sound, so I will be playing some like stock music over the background. Alright, now to the actual features. We're going to be starting off with the landscape. So, one of the first things I worked on for this project was the landscape. Later on down the road, I'm not actually sure if I will even use landscapes, or maybe I'll use randomly generated rooms and dungeons. But for now, I'm using landscapes as a good sort of test level. And landscapes are actually a built-in feature of Unreal, but what isn't is the procedural texturing that I've done on them. So all the textures you'll see on the landscape are actually calculated from two values, the slope and the relative height of any given point on the landscape. This means that you can have snow on top of mountains and sand on the bottom of oceans, without really having to do any work. This procedural texturing, it saves a lot of time, and as you can see, the result isn't too bad. You can see the sand from the ocean slowly blend up into grass, and then the grass slowly will blend up into snow. And with the slopes on the hills, you can see that the dirt will blend into rock, and the sand blends into the dirt. It all looks very natural. It looks like there's a natural height of every material here. So the main reason for this feature is that it's the best way to get bulk texturing for a landscape out of the way. None of that was hand painted. That's all generated, and it's amazing if you need to make something that, really quick on the fly, or you just sort of need to kind of visualize what a landscape might look like. I can always still go over and repaint the texture, maybe paint some grass, maybe paint some dirt or sand somewhere to make a desert, who knows. One thing you might notice in the landscape here is that it has a road, and that's a really small feature, but I thought I'd throw it in, so. Roads are pretty much just landscape splines. And landscape splines are, again, a feature that's actually built into Unreal, so I didn't really modify anything for these, but, I just thought I'd showcase how they work. I modeled up a quick little road here and tested out with the spline. As you can see, it works quite well. So the next feature is water, and right now I have a very pretty but very functionally simple water system in. The water is actually set to a physics volume, so when you enter it you will slow down. Your character will slow down, and anything physics-based that goes in there will slow down. It's also filled up with some post-processing volumes and volumetric fog to give it sort of this watery look, where when you go deeper it gets darker and you can't really see a whole lot. And I'm still debating on whether to add in swimming to the game or not, but for now the water is purely for looks. Alright, and the next feature is a vehicle. I first made this vehicle actor when I started the project, like almost the first day I think. And I enjoyed it so much that I kind of expanded on it a bit, just to see maybe I wanted to make a driving game. The vehicle itself is based off the vehicle actor class that comes with Unreal, but I added some features that I felt were missing. The first being cameras, obviously, because if you can't see, what's the point? I actually added two sets of cameras to be specific. I added a free look camera, where when being held down, the camera will lock to the mouse position and the car will move freely. It's great for whenever you need to look around the car. The other camera is your stock standard third-person camera. The difference being that this one incorporates some camera lag, which gives it this really nice cinematic, chase cam looking effect, while still being drivable. Another feature is the actual color of the car itself. There's 4 hotspots in the car, and I made a dynamic material where you can select a color and it will overlay it on top of the base material. So for the purpose of this devlog, I've made it that every time you press a button, it will randomly generate a color, or a couple of colors. So at the moment you only see 4 hotspots, but I can bump it up to every material on the car itself, or I could bump it down. Another feature on the vehicle is self-stabilization. When you go off a ramp, the car will slowly try and level itself off. Not a whole lot to say about that feature. It's a nice quality of life feature, I'd like to think. Just helps you drive a bit better. Another feature for the vehicle is inspired by GTA 5, and it's based off the stabilization feature, which is the ability to control your vehicle mid-air. As of right now, I've only set it up for shift and control, making it pitch up and down respectively. But if I ever plan on using the car, I will probably expand this to yaw and roll, so you can really get full motion of the vehicle. Now onto the big one, the player character. So let's start off the basics. The character can move in all directions. Left, forward, forward right, back, and back left. It also has animation sets and blends for 3 different speeds: walking, jogging, and sprinting. The character can also jump and has the respective blends for that as well. It also has aim offsets depending on what weapon, if any, is equipped. The current camera for the character is a bit placeholder, but for the current moment it has aim zoom, you can switch shoulders, and you can also change the distance of the camera. The player character can also interact with objects that you're looking at. One feature that I borrowed from the vehicle class is colorization. Just like the vehicle, there are some hotspots on the character where you can pick and choose your color. And again, for the purpose of this devlog, I've made it that when you press a button, it will randomly generate 2 colors for you. I plan on adding some more color schemes in the future to give a little bit more variety. The player also has health, armor, and stamina. I plan on adding some more attributes for the character, but for now it's just these 3. Armor currently doesn't do anything, but it will be used for damage reduction once I get some AI and damage implemented. Health is, well, health. Take damage, health will go down. Currently the only way to actually take damage is by falling, and I've made a very basic falling damage system. It simply gets your falling velocity, and if it's over a certain amount, it will damage your character based on an amount scaled by that velocity. As for sprinting, the system I've implemented will only allow you to sprint forward, and if you have enough energy to do so. Stamina restoration will only begin a couple of seconds after you stop sprinting. This stops people from constantly spamming sprinting. The character also has the ability to wear armor and equip weapons. Every major part of the body on this particular model has a socket assigned to it, and I've made a very basic set of armor here. And now for the item system. You can't really have one of these games without items, so I had to design an item system which would make my life down the road a whole lot easier with things like an inventory, random generators, and so on. The current system features 3 main types of items, which are consumables, which are things like health potions obviously, armor, which is armor, and weapons. The item system is based on a child-parent relationship, so there's a master item actor, which obviously has variables that every item will have, such as a value, a name, an item type, and a thumbnail for the inventory. Then it branches off into a master armor, master weapon, and master consumable. The system is especially useful for things like trading, storing in chests, and just general item management, because it's all based on spawning actors and referencing them. And now onto the inventory system, which was the biggest and hardest to make feature. This current version of the inventory features drag and drop capability, swapping, an equipment section with specific slots for specific parts of the player, and item overlays. Let me tell you right now, making this inventory system was very hard. The simplest functions like moving an item to a slot or just equipping something were surprisingly difficult. Eventually though, I got it working, and now it actually works quite well. The slots you can see here are actually just an image underlaid the main inventory box, because the slots themselves are invisible and I needed a way to visualize it so I could actually test it. So excuse the terrible looking inventory, again, all placeholder. Now for the inventory system and how it works, I'm actually not going to go into detail with that because we'd be here for a while. But it's pretty much based on Unreal's widgets within another Unreal widget. Widgets on top of widgets. For an example of the inventory in action, I'll take one of these random helmets from my generator here and show you equipping it. As you can see, when I interact with an item, it will be sent to my inventory where I can view its stats and equip it. And just like Diablo, certain slots can only be filled by certain items. So if I try and equip this helmet in any other slot that's not designated for, it'll give me an error. And when you equip it in the right spot, it will send its values to the player character or the respective item of which the attributes are changing. The only current attribute I have working right now, besides armor, is movement speed. So for the purpose of this dev blog, I allowed movement speed to generate to upwards of 50% per attribute. On release, I'll probably make sure to cap the speed to 1 to 5% per item and 25% movement speed overall because the animations start to look really goofy after a while. But as you can see, when I equip it, it increases my movement speed and their respective animations. With the equipment, you can also equip weapons, which I'm sure you saw earlier, but I will demonstrate again here. Now once again, the inventory system is nowhere near complete, but I'd like to think it's pretty good so far. And now for the random generator. For anyone that's ever played Borderlands, Diablo, Path of Exile, or any game similar to those, you would know that the random generator is extremely important. It can make or break the fun factor of your game. Because you want a game where you need to work for your items, but not to a point where it's just an endless grind. So in the coming months, I will slowly be tweaking the random generator. But for this particular video, the random generator is very much in its infancy. It only supports head armor. I can easily expand that to more, but the only real randomized generation I've set up is for the head armor. But right now, it will randomly generate the armor value, the color, and up to 5 attributes. And attributes are going to be stats like movement speed, damage, max health, reload speed, accuracy, jump height, etc. They are stats that can directly modify the character or any of the character's items. As of right now, the only 3 implemented are damage, max health, and movement speed, and the only one out of those that actually does anything is movement speed. But as you can see here, all of these helmets have different stats, different values, different armors. Some of them have 1 attribute, some of them have none, some of them have 4 or 5. It's all completely randomly generated. Right now, the name of the item is randomly generated, but it's going to eventually be based on the attributes and the stats of the item. So if you get 3 movement speed attributes on an item, it'll have the speedy prefix. Or maybe if you have lots of armor and a max health attribute, it'll have the tanky prefix. Something of that manner. The random generator will 100% be expanded upon to incorporate things like legendary attributes, dynamic thumbnails, and just a bunch of item types. And finally, time for the shooter elements. This is arguably the most important feature, because if your game doesn't play well, nobody's going to want to play it. For those who don't know, I'm referring to the shooting, the reloading, the aiming, the recoil, the spread, the ammo, and things of that manner when I say shooter elements. So let's start off with shooting. Currently the only weapon I have animated and implemented is the mag-fed semi-auto pistol, so I will be using that. Each weapon has the following variables: damage, RPM, accuracy, number of projectiles, reload speed, magazine size, range, and current ammo. Recoil has not yet been implemented, but will be very soon. For shooting itself, the system I've designed will get all those variables and project a trace accordingly. So for this current test pistol, it has a RPM of 120, a reload speed of 1.5 seconds, a range of 10,000 units, and an accuracy rating of 100. Now, for accuracy, 0 is a dead shot, meaning you're always going to hit where you aim. And 10,000 is almost a 180-degree shot in any direction. When I expand the random generator, almost all of those stats will be randomly generated. For the purpose of this devblog, I've enabled trace visualization, so you can see where the shot lands and its flight path. With the traces visualized, you can really see the spread in action. Now, let's modify the test pistol a bit and change its accuracy to 1000. Let's give it 12 projectiles and around 240 RPM. This might be, I guess, sort of like a semi-auto shotgun weapon. Now the animations might glitch out here a little bit. I have not actually implemented the speeding up of shooting animations yet, so excuse the glitchiness. So you can definitely see a difference here. The bullets spread out much more, and there's a significant increase of shots. And now, just for fun, let's do 100 projectiles, 10,000 accuracy, infinite ammo, and 1,000 RPM. As you can see, you can't see shit. Now for reloading. This reloading is similar to pretty much every reloading in any game, but the two defining features are the dynamic mag spawning and the arm placement. When I initially did the reload animation, when I would reload, whilst looking up or down, the left arm would reach out into thin air, grab a mag, and it just looked awful. So I made a blend space for the reloading animation, where if you look up, your character will reach very low to his waist, and if you look down, he won't reach that far at all. As you can see here, it looks very natural. That's pretty much all of the big features in the game. If you guys have any suggestions, feel free to let me know. Once again, these are all placeholder. I know some of the animations may look janky. There might have been some weird issues, clipping, weird zooming in issues. All of these will be addressed, but for the current moment, this is how the game is. For actual devlogs, I'll try and make one of these every month or so, but that depends on how much content I make, and if I even have the time. And in any case, just thank you so much for watching. Feel free to tell me what you think of it so far. I'm very open to criticism, and just let me know how it is. Appreciate it.